appreciate a lot of what you said. I definitely appreciate a lot of what you said. I have a similar background. I did 10 years in federal prison, and then I was sent to immigration detention after successfully appealing my conviction. During that time, fighting my case in ICE, I spent a total of 5 years. I was released on an ankle monitor because of organizing and just basically bringing attention to the facility that I was incarcerated in Etowah County, Alabama. It was an incident where officials tried to bring in people that were exposed to coronavirus. This is March 2020. And because we had that information from staff, we knew that they were exposed. And we tried to basically tell staff, can you put them somewhere else? Because we didn't want to be exposed with everything that was going on in the news. And we watching the death toll on TV every day. So it came to a point where they wanted to use force against us. I got on the rail, me and a guy named Tessa Miller, and we put nooses around our neck to stop them from using force to come into the unit and basically house us with other people that were affected by the COVID virus. Now, I just want to reiterate a lot of things that Dawn said. Similar situations during the pandemic, the BOP, ICE, they continued to bus in inmates and detainees from other facilities, basically being reckless with a deadly virus across the nation and spreading it. In that time, no cleaning supplies, everything that was being put out to the public were not factual, and they had an incentive to not report positive testing, because any facility that reported positive testing, they had to give you the numbers, and they would potentially lose their contract because they would have to transfer those people out. They would have to basically transfer the entire facility out. So they had an incentive not to report. Organizing for us, I've been organizing for a long time, long before COVID, because it's a thing when you're in prison. You have to become an organizer. You have to lead and to stand up for certain rights and privileges. So that was one of the major pushes. Like, I was trained and ready for when the pandemic happened to basically go on hunger strikes, take a stand, peacefully protest, because anytime you give them an opportunity to use violence, they will say that we initiated the violence and paint us in this bad picture. Many of which, we're just trying to go home after we served our time, and then some guys are just coming across the border. So having to deal with people of different demographics, people, like Don said, they would go home because they had 50% of their time in, versus, different fears or different things that, were triggers, were reasons for them not to fight, or not to put up a hunger strike, or not to participate, or to write a complaint. Because as migrants in the country, the difference between that and the BOP is we experience racism on a different level. We're a different class. We're not even second class. We're a subclass. So it's a triple minority in the South. So we had those experiences, and I had to get those guys together and make them understand what happened to you happens to me. So I have to fight for you the same way I would fight for somebody that's my complexion from my country. And that's what I did. So I was able to get a lot of guys to participate and essentially bring attention to what was going on in the New Orleans field office. We didn't get the courthouse relief. We didn't get the case law that Don had, because that wasn't the thing in Alabama. We wouldn't get habeas relief. We wouldn't get class action relief.
Frame, can you hear me?
What happened?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yo,
Yes.
I was just trying to, I know we're like running a little bit behind on time, and I was hoping if you could help like share about the organizing against electronic monitoring and like those pieces. And also, Don, if you could share some about, I know you mentioned like the work against like the violations and things, but if we could hear some about the tactics that y'all have used and explored around that.
Okay. So with the ankle monitoring, different people have used different things, as such like medical complaints, different reasons to go to the hospital, things, scans, and sometimes you're denied that relief. I was denied several times, even though I had different medical issues. ICE have denied me the removal of my ankle monitor. To get into Dawn, because we had a discussion about what organizing looks like now and how do you work with different organizations with different belief systems. So I do want to ask Don, how does that work and how does that look? What does that look like, especially with the rehabilitation criteria that you want set forth? Like, how would you present that to politicians or legislators to say, well, these people have rehabilitated and they shouldn't have ankle monitors?
Well, I believe that the statistics themselves make our case. If there was ever a population, we had the least amount of services, yet we have been the most successful. So that speaks to the fact that there wasn't the great need that people would like to say you need coming out of a facility. And I believe that we've shown them that if you give folks an opportunity, most of us recognize we made a mistake, and making a mistake shouldn't be a lifelong sentence and lead to ankle monitoring and things that affect your entire family. Most people don't understand when you're on an ankle monitor, your entire family is subjected to the phone calls that come in the middle of the night, the unexpected visits, all of those things. And so we just started pointing out the harshness of electronic monitoring, how it was violating basic rights for individuals and setting them up for failure. And that alone became the conversation about why folks needed to get off of monitors and find alternatives so that they could be supervised in a humane way that didn't affect them and their families. Healthcare, all of those various things, the simplest thing, just to be able to walk into a store and buy basic needs, you need a pass. And so we just literally started detailing every reason why it wasn't working and why we needed help, and reaching out to, all of our politicians, since we came from different states. If everybody called their elected official with the same issue, it raised the conversation. And I just believe overall in all of the organizations, we have more in common than we do against each other. And if we could just find that neutral ground of what we agree on and collaborate on that, we would accomplish so much more as we look at justice policies and how they impact the people we're trying to assist.
So I had another question, Don. So in terms of dealing with the ankle monitor and having to choose, right, there becomes a line that we have to, you know, how when we have to, in prison, we would have to, the policy says that we never have to choose between the law library and a meal, right? And a lot of times here we have to choose the lesser of an evil between ankle monitor or, remaining in confinement. And how do we combat that? How do we deal with those of us that are still incarcerated? How do we help those brothers and sisters to obtain the freedom and bring more awareness to what an ankle monitor looks like and how to fight against that once that time comes when you're out here on the outside, and how to get people to continue to participate
I
in their
think you need a
defense, in their
twofold
freedom.
you need a twofold strategy. I think we should be focused on how many people can we get released, regardless of what it is. If it's an electronic monitor, if it's a phone monitor, because at least that person is out of the facility of being imprisoned in a cell, etc. And then we can start fighting the battle of, why they should be released to the next stage based on their behavior, their activities, etc. And I think each individual's case is different, but if we start with the low hanging fruit of how many people can we just get out of a BOP facility and get them home to their family, then we can take on the next fight of why the ankle monitor or the phone monitor makes no sense, based on what they're doing, how they have interacted and reintegrated, etc. But you can't get to the second step without first having the first one. And so if we just we don't want people out on electronic monitors, and that means that they stay in facilities, then how do we get to make the case of why we don't need electronic monitoring? So you have to have one in order to get to the other.
Um, and I think the message here is just work together towards the. To Danny, thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Don. Thank you, Kareem. And as folks heard, right, there is an array of methods that folks have been using to pressure for release from confinement, and then also the harms of electronic monitoring, incarceration from violations, right? Like I heard Don say, it's basically setting people up to fail. In many ways, it was like their tactics to, keep people incarcerated, right? And so that's one thing that has come up in the conversations we've been having leading up to this workshop today, right? The real challenges that come up of individual cases and the collective demands. And there's a tension there that exists because we want to make sure we keep fighting for liberation for all, for the abolition of electronic monitoring, right, in all its forms, and also recognizing that if an individual might be in a certain situation to make a decision that, like Kareem said, it's the lesser of two evils, then we recognize that. It's a decision that folks make and we support them, right? And like the way that Don showed and like the organizing work that they've done, a lot of folks needed support when they came out. And so how do we make sure that they have what they need to be able to, be good, be with their communities and their loved ones. And so just want to also recap, right, a lot of some of the tactics that I heard. So one, right, a lot of documentation, gathering information, a lot of notes, right? And also sharing that with partners, for example, folks who might have some legal expertise that can help out. There was also a lot of sharing information with, like the systems of being organized, right? Folks who were gathering information, sharing it with Don, and then how it got out to other folks. And then the health notes as well that Kareem mentioned, some strategies that folks could use their health experiences as ways to show why there should be support and releasing folks. And then also the way that around EM, right, detailing every reason why EM has been harmful, and then pushing politicians. And I heard the cool example, right, in different states and pushing people in different areas around the same issue really showed the priority it should be. And so I want to recognize that we are a little bit behind on time. And so if folks need, if folks need like a moment to get up and stretch and, take a breather, please do so. Like, no worries. I think we're gonna need to skip the break though. So apologies for that. We were trying to sneak it in, but I don't think we're gonna be able to. So we're gonna go ahead and shift over to an activity that will be sort of grappling with some of these tensions that we've been discussing in this session. And I'm gonna pass it over to Ambrose to set us up.
Awesome. Hey, everyone. Danny, should I share my screen with the slide? Okay, cool. Hi, everyone. My name is Ambrose Brooks. I use they, them, and their pronouns, and I'm with the Justice LA Coalition here in LA County. And I'm so grateful to be with you all today. We've been doing a lot of work in LA County to push back against the expansion of electronic monitoring. And there was a recent board, the Board of Supervisors, which is the LA County primary government here in LA County. There's 5 supervisors for 10 million residents of LA County. And the Board of Supervisors author and pass motions that dictate some of the policies here in Los Angeles. So a couple weeks ago, we were faced with a situation that now we've turned into a hypothetical for our activity today. So here's a little outline of the situation that we experienced a few weeks ago. 2 of the 5 board supervisors authored a motion related to pretrial and decarceration. If the motion was successful, meaning 3 out of the 5 board members voted in favor, the motion would encourage, and this is a keyword, just encourage the LA County Sheriff's Department to use their discretion to release people from pretrial detention. So pretrial being the period of time in the criminal legal process before there is a resolution to a person's case. Here in LA County, over 40% of the people in LA County jails are there pre-trial, many of whom are there because they can't afford to pay bail. Under a California statute, a California penal code, sheriff departments throughout the state can use their discretion to release people and say, okay, we're not going to set a bail amount, but everyone released would be subjected to electronic monitoring. And here in LA County, electronic monitoring is supervised by the probation department. And in LA County, what we've seen is that many people are reincarcerated after they are put on a monitor, not because they have been charged with another offense, but because they have experienced technical violations. You know, maybe they missed a check-in with their probation officer. Maybe the monitor itself was having technical difficulties. Maybe somebody wanted to pick up an extra work shift and didn't communicate that to their probation officer. So this is the current state of electronic monitoring in LA County. The county government continues to contract with large electronic monitoring providers in order to expand the use here in LA. So under this motion that was up at the Board of Supervisors a few weeks ago, the Sheriff's Department would be encouraged, not forced, not mandated, just encouraged to release people with electronic monitoring. So here is the situation. Some community groups, with directly and indirectly impacted community members, have come out in support of the motion because it could potentially reduce the number of people detained pre-trial. Other community groups are pushing back due to the electronic monitoring requirement. These community groups are saying that, what about just releasing people without supervision, without electronic monitoring, and the consequences that go along with putting somebody on a monitor? So this is the hypothetical, and we are going to go into breakout rooms to talk about how we would respond if we were put in the situation. But first, before we go, I just want to make sure to answer any questions if things have come up for y'all. Also know that facilitators in your breakout room will be able to field questions too. All right. I think it's time to go to breakout rooms.
Hey, Ambrose, this is Jack speaking. I wanted to make sure that our access setup is clear. So we will have 3 breakout rooms that are in English. If you want to have a Spanish room, that will be in the main room. So you can do one of 2 things. You can drop in the chat, keep me in the Spanish room. Or you can stay in the main room and decline the breakout room invitation. Any questions about that? Yes, thank you, Annie. I appreciate that. And the same goes with ASL. So because of the way Zoom is set up in a potentially unfriendly way for access needs, our ASL interpreters will be in the main room as well. So access needs, Spanish, ASL, main room. All right, I'm gonna open up these rooms.
Just one quick reminder for facilitators. So we have 3 main questions. We'll be discussing how do we respond, like what do we say and do when these situations happen. And then we also need one person to just take notes, and folks can compile those, and then one person to report back. And the report back will be very brief, just like one cool tactic or one cool idea that came out from like the discussion that can be used to respond.
This was one of the sign language interpreters. I just want to clarify, we can go to one of the breakout rooms, but you need to communicate with us if you need ASL interpreters. We will wait in the main room, but we will not be interpreting here unless someone specifically requests, because we will, at least one of the ASL interpreters will need to be interpreting from English, spoken language, not because she doesn't understand Spanish.
Danny, will you be assigning us to rooms so that you could try to make sure that there's an organizer in each room, or how is that working?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Will be assigned. So off we go. Okay, vamos a esperar. Creo que quizás hay un par de personas más que podrían estar aquí. Voy a... Ok, ¿me oyen?
Sí, lo escucho.
Sí, ok, listo. Voy a mandar un mensaje a los grupos de las preguntas. Ok, entonces quiero ver, no sé qué está apareciendo aquí. Nomás estoy chequeando si quizás hay alguien más que podría estar en este espacio. Ok, creo que estamos bien. Pues bueno, empecemos. Ahorita vamos a tener esta conversación sobre 3 preguntas. Antes de eso, ¿alguien tiene una pregunta sobre la actividad que estamos haciendo? ¿O sería de ayuda que la vuelva a explicar? Sí, Ernesto.
¿Me logran escuchar?
Sí.
Sí, muy buenas tardes. Logré entender que esta es la segunda, bueno, es la segunda sesión. Me perdí la primera sesión y me gustaría tal vez profundizar un poquito más el tema de que realmente se trata.
Listo. Sí, claro, podemos hacer un poco de eso. Entonces, ahorita estamos... Un segundito. Estamos haciendo esta serie de aprendizaje para este proyecto Desencadenando la Libertad. que es contra el monitoreo electrónico, que es el encarcelamiento electrónico, ¿verdad? Entonces, cuando muchas personas salen de detención, cárcel, etcétera, les ponen sea un grillete o otras formas de monitorear a las personas con tecnología. Ahora se está viendo mucho, por ejemplo, teléfonos, aplicaciones de teléfonos que usan las agencias, y pues estamos luchando para prevenir que se expanda este sistema y luchar para que, pues sí, que pare ese, que que se haga que haya abolición del monitoreo electrónico, ¿verdad? Entonces, ¿eso ayuda, Ernesto?
Sí, sí, muchas gracias.
Listo, claro. Entonces, pues hoy y en la primera sesión se aprendió bastante de cómo es la práctica, y puedo también mandarle el enlace. Hoy pues vamos a hacer un poquito esta actividad, ¿verdad? Como se mencionó y si están viendo el slide, el link de los slides en español, es la página número 5. Entonces, en este ejemplo, el escenario es de que el condado de Los Ángeles está considerando esta propuesta, ¿verdad? De sugerir que el alguacil puede dejar a personas salir de la cárcel, pero con monitoreo electrónico. Entonces, pues la primera pregunta que tenemos ahorita es como un poquito de crear ideas, ¿verdad? Y cómo poder argumentar hacia la liberación, ¿verdad? Entonces, hay algunas personas que quizás digan que están a favor de que las personas, si van a salir de la cárcel, que tienen que estar en monitoreo electrónico. ¿Qué ideas tienen para responder a ese argumento? Como para decir, pues no debería ser así, ¿verdad? Si las personas están saliendo. ¿Qué ideas tienen para responder?
Pues soy Abby, para todos los que no me conocen. Este, yo estuve el grillete durante 3 años y la verdad siento que no es la mejor salida, aunque la gente dice como, pero estás libre. Y no es cierto porque no nos dan empleo, nos discriminan en la calle, aunque andamos con niños. Yo recuerdo que ni siquiera me gustaba usar como chores o ropa con la que se me pudiera ver el billete. Entonces, para mí no es una forma como la mejor forma, porque entonces esa no es la libertad, no nos están dando la libertad completa. Este, y creo que aunque nos escuchen, pues hay gente que cuando escucha, cuando escucha lo que uno ha vivido, entonces entiende un poco de cómo esto nos afecta. Pero siento que a quienes debemos de llegar serían los políticos, porque somos madres, somos padres, hermanos e hijos quienes estamos usando estos billetes, y pues mayormente somos pues personas inmigrantes y nos sentimos criminalizados. Sí. Es un sistema racial demasiado duro, la verdad.
Gracias, Avi. Estoy tomando un poco de notas. No me fijé bien quién levantó la mano primero. Quizás pasamos con Beatriz y luego Ernesto.
Ok, gracias, Dani. Hola a todas, soy Beatriz. Con lo que menciona Avi, siento que una forma que hay que trabajar es la narrativa. Y como ella dice, no hay acceso a trabajo. Entonces debemos empezar a reconocer que también existe la violencia económica. Eso hay que tipificarlo y ampliarlo, de que también ellos están violentando no solamente nuestra parte emocional, también la parte física, pero la parte económica también, porque eso hace que pues no tengas acceso a un empleo. Y el no tener acceso a un empleo también afecta directamente a cómo se desarrolla esta familia, a tus hijos, que no puedas tener para renta, y viene a generar un declive de diferentes situaciones emocionales más que todo, y que creo que mucha gente de nuestra comunidad todavía no le toma mucha importancia a la salud emocional, y eso nos afecta a corto, a mediano y a largo plazo, y también viene a ser violento para nuestros hijos a largo plazo cuando no le estamos focalizando de qué forma nos están violentando. Gracias.
Gracias, Beatriz. Pasamos con Ernesto.
Sí, muchas gracias. Sí, como estaba compartiendo las compañeras, estoy totalmente de acuerdo con todo lo que ya se compartió. En lo personal, bueno, salí como menor acá, bueno, me dejaron en libertad como menor acá en los Estados Unidos. Después de 2, 3 meses me pusieron el grillete por 3 meses. Entonces, a pesar de que uno viene huyendo de su país natal, por todo el sufrimiento durante su trayectoria en México, llega, ¿no? Con ese miedo. Y algo que estaba pensando y digo, pues es como un encarcelamiento de libertad. No estamos libres, pero estamos controlados. Estamos libres, pero estamos eh, eh, encarcelados. Ese miedo interno, internalizado en cada uno, uno se vuelve como títere, ¿no? Del sistema que tiene que seguir. Uno tiene libertad, pero tiene cierto límite de libertad. También en el trabajo me tocó vivir por 3 meses en el trabajo donde me tocó usar el grillete, el más grande era muy grande. Entonces para ponerlo en las botas no se podía. Para cargarlo éramos como, no sé cómo explicarlo, pero éramos como animales amarrados ante el cable, el cordón donde se carga el aparato, ¿no? Entonces, también esto vemos cómo afecta emocionalmente. Tal vez no tengo derecho de compartir una historia, pero yo he visto en lo personal una muchacha con una niña que también le pusieron el grillete. Entonces vemos de dónde ella venía escapando. Ella es de Guatemala. De dónde ella venía escapando. De qué era lo que ella venía escapando. Del gobierno, de los maltratos del gobierno. Y para venir acá a sufrir lo mismo, ella lo que hizo lo cortó y se fue. Porque se sentía muy encarcelada. Liberada, pero encarcelada. El sufrimiento en el trabajo. Y algo que compartió a la compañera, el sufrimiento, la vergüenza al salir en la calle con un short. Tiempos de verano, es lo que uno pues, usualmente usa, ¿no? Entonces, ese miedo, esa vergüenza, ¿no? En tenerlo ahí. Y no se dan cuenta, después dicen, oh, ella se fue o dejó su corte o ya es otra, es como, por decir, como una amenaza, ¿no? Que viene hacia uno, decir, oh, se escapó porque no quería seguir. Ella quería seguir, pero era el miedo que ella tenía a ser controlada en todo momento. Entonces, sí, es lo que puedo compartir, el miedo internalizado, el encarcelamiento de libertad, el afecto emocional y también otro punto es ser como títeres, ¿no? del sistema. Es lo que puedo compartir y muchas gracias.
Gracias, Ernesto, por compartir. Veo que Abby tiene la mano levantada y tenemos 3 minutos más. También quería, y quizás Abby puedes agregar un poco de esto, pero como en la situación que se presentó para lo de Los Ángeles, ¿verdad? Habían algunos grupos de personas que habían estado encarceladas, ¿verdad? Y esos grupos estaban diciendo, dejen que las personas salgan con monitoreo electrónico, ¿verdad? Como estaban apoyando esta propuesta. Y los otros grupos estaban diciendo, pues si van a dejar que salgan, ¿verdad? Que déjenlos libres, ¿verdad? Entonces, más o menos, pues, ¿qué responderían a un grupo así, ¿verdad? O una persona. Pero sí, Abby, ¿qué ibas a decir?
Sí, creo que la propuesta que deberíamos de hacer me gusta como lo que dijo Beatriz, hablando sobre lo económico, ¿qué le estamos enseñando a nuestros hijos? Nosotros también, a cómo sobrevivir. Ellos nos miran que nosotros trabajamos a diario, y pues nos quitan la alegría de muchas cosas, y pues una de mis propuestas sería pues tenemos niños que son nacidos aquí, son ciudadanos americanos, entonces, ¿por qué no ponerlos a ellos como en primer lugar y decir, pues que si son el futuro, qué están haciendo para que los niños vean un futuro bueno, y pues un presente estable para sus hijos y para para sus padres, y pues que esos hijos crezcan bajo un hogar o una familia o una padre o una madre pues estable económicamente y psicológicamente también, pues porque creo que lo que necesitamos es una estabilidad tanto mental como económica.
Definitivamente, sí. La incertidumbre, ¿verdad? Crea mucho de eso, del miedo, ¿verdad? Y el impacto también mental, emocional, como están compartiendo. Definitivamente veo a Beatriz, me hago la pregunta, ¿quién se beneficia económicamente de esos proyectos de usar las tecnologías para violentar? Muy de acuerdo, ¿verdad? Hay las compañías, hay también, pues, como son ciclos, ¿verdad? De dinero que fluyen entre políticos, compañías, donaciones a políticos y toda la onda, ¿verdad? Entonces es algo que sí podríamos ir explorando más. Ahorita vamos a regresar a los grupos, al grupo completo en como 60 segundos. ¿Hay alguien que se anima? Pues no, quería ver si hay otro comentario más, pero también quería ver si hay alguien que se anima a compartir, a dar un breve resumen, como una táctica que salió. Y puede ser en español, se los interpretan en inglés en el espacio. Pues que salió la táctica del ángulo económico, ¿no? Entonces, podría ser como algo de compartir eso y lo de la familia, estabilidad, etcétera.
Ay, ¿usted se anima? Si usted se anima, yo le hago segunda.
Tengo aquí mi bullicio, mejor yo le hago segunda.
Anímese, Abby. No se oyen los niños, no se oyen, no se preocupe.
Bueno,
Bueno,
aquí voy entonces.
listo, gracias.
Bueno.
Okay, everyone. I hope those discussions were fruitful and lively, as the one I had the opportunity to be in, as well. And if folks could maybe drop a quick reaction in the chat of how you feel like the conversation went, that would be great. Or in just your emoji reactions, right? And so we'll do a quick report back. And how about we kick off with Jay's group?
I knew you were going to choose me first. Well, we had a really good conversation, and we're really thinking about how context matters in these kind of conversations. Because looking at, like, James mentioned Cook County, where it's like 24-hour house arrest, and in a lot of ways it's not better than prison because you're not really leaving anywhere, and also you have to pay all this money. But someone else might have like pretty much free roam. They just gotta wear the monitor. So like having different understandings of like what the context is will really help to understand like what we should be advocating for, or like how we should be advocating. And also this idea that like people at the end of the day, that what they want is freedom. They don't want like the ankle monitor, they want freedom, but it's just they see the ankle monitor as a means to get freedom. But that kind of illusion goes away really fast for people once they're actually on it, because there's this sense of like, this layer of anxiety, having to check in, having to watch clocks. And so even after it's removed, that sort of like trauma is there where, folks are still thinking they have to like check in and stuff like that. And so, yeah, I see like a tactic of getting people to understand like what is true freedom, what is the illusion of freedom, and how can we use the differentiation between the two to really like inform our organizing and inform our work. So really good conversation. Thanks group 2.
Sounds great. Thank you so much for sharing. How about we go over to the group that I was in? ¿Qué tal si pasamos con Abby?
Hola, buenas tardes a todos. Pues también estábamos pensando, ¿verdad? Una de las cosas, cómo nos hacen violencia económica y pues no tenemos la estabilidad económica para sostener nuestras familias. Y pues también hablábamos de cómo sostener, cómo tener estabilidad económica y mental, cómo enseñarle a nuestros hijos. Hay muchos niños que son ciudadanos americanos que se dicen que son el futuro de este país. Entonces, ¿cómo le vamos a enseñar a estos niños que sus padres están mal económicamente, no apenas y alcanzan para sobrevivir? No quieren que seamos carga pública tampoco. No podemos salir con nuestros hijos a gusto, campante allá a un parque porque tenemos que andar pendiente de esa cosa. No podemos entrar al agua con los niños porque los grilletes se arruinan y además de eso, si se arruinan los cobran. Entonces, esa es la propuesta. También, ¿verdad? ¿Cómo le enseñamos a los futuros ciudadanos de este país a ser estables económicamente y mentalmente y pues cómo en el presente sus padres están viviendo y pues cómo va a ser su futuro también como hijos de inmigrantes? Gracias. Beatriz, no sé si quieres decir algo más.
Sí, gracias, Abby. Hola a todos, soy Beatriz. Y como mencionaba Abby, creo que sería bueno empezar a cambiar la narrativa de violencia económica, de violencia emocional, violencia física también, porque a mucha gente se le ha generado algún tipo de alergias, le ha generado algún tipo de hongos. Lo que menciona Abby sobre los niños es cómo esto también genera bullying en las escuelas y que los niños se sienten criminalizados por otros niños porque sus padres tienen el concepto de que si ven a alguien que tiene un grillete es criminal. Y ver cómo todo esto viene y afecta a nuestra comunidad. Y me hacía una pregunta, y a lo mejor esa es como una manera también en donde empezar a focalizar y es, ¿quién se beneficia de esto? ¿Cuántas personas están llenándose sus bolsillos a través de criminalizar a la comunidad? Esa es la forma como de responderle a la gente que está de acuerdo. O sea, ¿te afecta porque vas a dejar de percibir algo económicamente? Y empezar como a tratar esos puntos escabrosos y de dinero que son los que mueven esto. Y a lo mejor mucha gente no quiere como hablar del tema porque a ellos no les conviene que la gente sepa que eso es un negocio y que les pongas números y les digas, estás haciendo esto a través de violentar la humanidad de las personas. Solamente.
Well, thank you, Beatriz and Abby. So just echoing, right, thinking about how to call out that this is economic violence against folks as well, putting people on electronic monitoring, limiting movement, limiting access to like jobs, for example, and also the uncertainty and lack of stability that causes, impacting folks' emotional, mental well-being, and also of their kids and loved ones. How about we pass it over to whose group is next? Ambrose?
Sure. Just want to offer, does anyone else from the group want to share a little bit about the conversation? It's okay if not, but just want to offer that. Okay. Well, in our breakout room actually was a couple of folks from Media Justice and a couple of folks from LA who, actually experienced this hypothetical a few weeks ago. And so something, we talked about is really grounding ourselves in the principle that freedom from prison, jail, and electronic monitoring is the only way forward. And that context is really important. It was brought up that during the fight around bail reform, people were getting really caught up in certain details, like people who are charged with felonies should be detained and people who are charged with misdemeanors shouldn't. However, we need to continue to hold the line and take the stance that pretrial detention for anybody is not okay. And detention for anybody is not okay. And something we talked about is also just approaching people and conversations and opposition with compassion, asking questions about why somebody is taking a certain stance, and then also offering ideas and answers about why we are taking a certain stance of public opposition. And so it was just great to get to talk through some things with our group. And we, obviously all understand that these conversations are only going to become more frequent as more counties across the country lean into using electronic monitors. We're going to be faced with a lot of difficult conversations, and it's always important for organizations to ground themselves in their values and principles before taking a stance on a position.
Thanks, Ambrose. Now we'll go over to Catherine and Emmett.
Yeah, we had a great conversation and we have a reporter on deck. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
So
on.
Jermaine, go ahead.
I got you, Team Catherine. We said, first of all, we got to start out picking up right where the last speaker just said on what Ambrose said. We have to start out from a place of love. We have to establish some type of guidelines so we can have a conversation without attacking each other, because too often people come in there and they want what they want and that's it. So that's where we started at. And then we realized that, first of all, electronic monitoring is expensive. A lot of people don't know that. They think that you're going to get out of jail is free. They don't understand that electronic monitoring and state violence mimic domestic violence in methodology. You're not getting free. You're just bringing prisons into the home. That's what really stuck out to me, that phrase. We're bringing prisons into the homes. And we also talked about we need to start with education and awareness. We have to make sure people are educated on this topic. We got to center love and community. We have to align forces. We can learn from other people that's out there organizing, like some of these young folks. And we got to start thinking and explaining about the future generation. Like, we may want to get out of jail right now, but we don't realize we're kicking the can down the road. It's not going to solve the big problem that we've been fighting for 500 years. So we also need to look forward. And that's my report out.
Like, I just one thing there from the group that we talked about is the fact that the work that we're doing is to try to create options for people instead of removing options. It's actually to create real options. We're working to fight against the system as opposed to eliminating options from individuals. And I think that's something it's important to keep in mind as well. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Jermaine and Emmett. Did I miss anyone? Or is there something that somebody else would want to share that was just like, oh man, that was fire? Anything folks want to share? Cool. Ambrose, I see, do you still want to share this, or you think we're good?
Sure, but I also, definitely want to offer some more time at some point to talk more fully about this. Just quickly, in Los Angeles, as part of our organizing, we're meeting with folks who have been subjected to pretrial electronic monitoring. And we're doing this alongside UCLA criminal justice program. And one thing that we've really focused on over the last 4 months as part of this survey and interviews are how do we approach this from a framework of compassionately informed interviewing. You know, some people describe it as trauma-informed interviewing, but I think it's also important to frame it as compassionate, empathetic, and active listening informed interviewing. Because one of the main ways that we can push back against narratives in support of electronic monitors is working, obviously, with those who have been personally impacted by electronic monitoring themselves, many of whom are here in this room with us, who have already shared their brilliant wisdom with us tonight. And I just wanted to share a couple of resources. And full disclosure, you know, some of these were written for attorneys who very much need training in how to be a good listener, how to connect with people. One big thing that was a takeaway from our compassionate informed interview training is like 80% listening. And the other 20% is asking follow-up questions, really actively listening and caring about what somebody is sharing with you. And really letting them lead the course of the conversation. And I will put those resources in the chat, but also just wanted to offer a quick space for anyone who has questions about how us in LA have gone about engaging in compassionate informed interviewing of folks we're working with who have been subjected to monitors when they were kids, recently through pretrial release, and then some people post release.
Maybe there are no questions. Well, thank you so much, Ambrose. If you can drop the resources in the chat, that'd be great. And we'll also send them along to folks in follow-up. And as you mentioned, it would be really great to have a more in-depth space to discuss this, right? I know there are folks on this call who are really interested in trying to build relationships with folks who share their experience, or others who like haven't had the experience but are trying to build with community, right? And so a lot of these tools and resources will be really helpful. I see a hand is up. Beatriz, do you want to ask a quick question?
Sí, más que una pregunta, bueno, sí es pregunta y comentario a la vez. Y conozco gente que ha llegado hace poco y han estado en el monitoreo electrónico, pero después de 3 meses los han sacado del programa. Pero también hay otras personas que han estado detenidas por varios años y fueron liberadas, y todavía después de 2 o 3 años traen el grillete. Entonces, ¿en qué se están basando para determinar a quién le dejan más tiempo el grillete o quién termina más pronto este programa? Y eso me lleva a la pregunta, ¿cómo nosotros podemos empezar a prepararnos para que no exista esa división entre la comunidad? Porque cuando alguien se da cuenta de que, bueno, por ejemplo, yo tengo 3 años de tener el grillete, pero vino otra persona y apenas estuvo 3 meses en el proceso. De cierto modo me va a crear ese punto de ¿y por qué a ella sí y por qué a mí no? Y esos son puntos que crean como ese conflicto interno entre la comunidad. Entonces mi pregunta viene como a qué tipo de cosas podemos empezar a planear para tratar de que esto no escale y que no haya esa división, sino en la parte de concientizar y no esperar de que nuestro otro compañero, pues, si tuvo la suerte, qué bueno, pero que no nos hace sentir, que no seamos enemigos entre nosotros. Solo quería compartir eso.
Listo. Yep. Thank you so much. Definitely, we know it's a tactic of the state and private companies and all these players that try to divide folks, right? And we see it across multiple issues. And that's why the work is to organize, come together, have a collective vision, demands, and fight for freedom, right? As folks have been saying. Abby, I know I just saw your hand. We're at 2 minutes from time, so if it's okay, we can follow up offline. I just want to please ask folks to give us your feedback. I just dropped a link in the chat as well. We'd really love to hear from folks about how you think this workshop went. We're also planning some for the next workshop, which will be in June, about a lot of what folks are bringing up already today, right? Thinking about the narrative, thinking about how our stories are going to be, presented most powerfully, and how to counter arguments that are being harmful and being used to expand incarceration, right? And so the next workshop, you can give us some ideas of what you'd like to dig in on. And then it's also really helpful for us as well, to just get some and you can also add information about, like, if you're interested in following up, like a one-on-one, sharing more about your local work, we're more than happy to do that. And as we are at time, I want to take the opportunity to say thank you to today's presenters, Don from the Danbury 100 and all the amazing work that y'all do, Kareem, Freedom to Thrive, and then folks who helped out as well with the breakouts. So much, great conversation. It sounds like we had in these spaces. So I ask folks, if you can, if you have some of those notes, please send them over. We can include them in follow-up information that everybody will get by email if they're. And so, yeah, I think that's it for today. Anything last minute that we may have missed, or any final questions? All right.
Sí.
We're
Yo
good. Oh.
lo que quería decir es, ellos hacen firmar una carta de consentimiento, y aunque uno no esté dando el consentimiento, o sea, uno no quiere tener el grillete, ¿verdad? Pero pues tiene que hacerlo por quedarse aquí. Entonces, ¿hay alguna forma de evitar que ellos lo hagan firmar eso, aunque uno no quiera?
It's a great question. I'm definitely gonna note that down, and we can share that with some folks from the Unshackling Freedom Squad, for example, that are part of this effort, and get back to you on that. And because definitely it's really important questions, and figuring out how we can remove power from the state, right? And that could be an idea. So yeah, thank you all so much. We really appreciate you all being here, and for you sharing your thoughts and wisdom, experiences. And we're really looking forward to continuing to build together. Have a good one, everyone.
Good night.
Bye. Thank you.
Gracias.
Gracias a todos.